Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
a modern witch's spoken word grimoire,
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense,
your cauldron and your crystals,
and join us
as we get
Back on the Broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and tonight we have a plethora of topics for your delight. It is Friday the 13th when this episode comes out, one of my favorite days, one of my favorite horror movie franchises. Okay, they're a little cheesy, but fun. It's also about a week before the festival of the Autumn Equinox, when the day and night are equal length.
And, here I am, Shell, sitting over here, living life. For me, this is my favorite time of year. I named a child after something in this season, and I am a Friday the 13th lover, okay? Who does not love Jason Voorhees, okay? And, just a little side note, let me go off on a tangent real quick. Where I am in Massachusetts, about 10 miles from my house, there is a Crystal Lake. Just saying. I swear he lives there still because it had to be that Crystal Lake in my mind. But also, it is my sweet love's birthday. But also, Layla, with Friday the 13th
Shall?
comes superstitions.
It does. I've always loved the superstitions of Friday the 13th. As much as it seems like everyone knows that Friday the 13th is bad luck, not everybody knows exactly where it came from. And to be honest, the origins of it are shrouded in a little bit of mystery. It seems the most accepted reason for Friday the 13th being an unlucky day has to do with the Knights Templar. Some people say that when the Knights Templar were arrested on Friday, October 13th of 1307, that started the origin of the Friday the 13th superstition. Other people think that it may possibly be related to a book that came out in 1907 called Friday the 13th by T.W. Lawson. And that has to do with the stock market crashing on Friday the 13th as the source of all this bad luck. There are other cultures that have other dates. Tuesday the 13th in both Hispanic and Greek culture is unlucky. So there's a lot of things around the 13th, but 13 happens to be my lucky number.
There was some shit with the Knights Templar.
Yeah. So, it kind of comes from there. And then all the superstitions just followed. And it's a lot of fun, I think, nowadays. And one of my absolute favorites that I think is so weird is, did you know, Shell, that if you put your shoes on the table on Friday the 13th, someone in your house might die?
What?
My first thought here is, who the heck puts their shoes on the table? Like, is that something you really need to worry about on any day, let alone Friday the 13th?
Okay, now in the household I grew up in, that is null and void, because if I put my shoes on the table on any day, 365, I would have been murdered by my mother. Okay. It didn't have to be Friday the 13th. It could have been Tuesday the 8th, and I would have gotten murdered. Okay.
Yeah, probably at my house too. I don't know. It doesn't sound like something anyone would do. That's kind of why I love it, because it seems so absurd. Like, how did this become a superstition of something you shouldn't do on the 13th? Anyway. So while I was looking up some facts, I found from a website called worldstrides.com that there are superstitions around the world about Friday the 13th. So before we start talking about the autumn equinox, I'm just going to give you a couple of these from other cultures. So in Norse lore, they say that Friday the 13th is unlucky because the gods got together for a big old party in Valhalla, and Loki crashed the party as the 13th guest and caused all sorts of problems. So they say that's why 13 is unlucky, particularly Friday the 13th. Christians think that the Last Supper, there were 13 people at that particular dinner party. The fear of Friday the 13th is known as frigatriskaidekaphobia. Frigatriskaidekaphobia. Not even going to try it.
Yeah, no.
The name comes from the Freya, the Norse god for Friday, and triskaidekaphobia, which is the fear of the number 13. So they work in a goddess in there.
Now, some other interesting 13 lore is it isn't always looked at as a bad luck, quote unquote, evil number. Because for millions and millions of people across the world who are Taylor Swift fans, the Swifties, 13 is like the number. Taylor Swift was born on December 13th. Her first album went gold after 13 weeks. And I believe she turned 13 on a Friday the 13th. So if you're a Swiftie, there is no bad vibes with 13, man.
Wow, all hail Taylor Swift. Dang. Okay, so Taylor Swift's unofficial day. I'm down with that.
Don't they say that? Now, I know that we don't believe the hype. I get that. But isn't there a quote unquote thing that actual coven should have 13 people?
Yes, one of the ideas was that
Like
it
I
should
heard
be
that
13.
somewhere.
Yeah, I've heard that that is the traditional number for a coven. As you and I both know, a coven can be as few as two
Unrealistic.
people, as
Right.
many as 70. It's usually a handful. So, yeah, nothing there. 13's always been lucky for me. I'm not sure why, but ever since I was little, it was my favorite number. When I would place different sports ball teams in my youth, 13 was always my number, and it's always been a lucky day for me. It's even more fun now because my bestie's beloved, his birthday is on the 13th, Friday the 13th this year. So many good things.
It's also the reverse of my birthday. My birthday's the 31st. Flop it, it's 13. Combined them together, you get that core number four.
Oh, now we're getting into some fun numerology. So before we get too far down that path, let's.
Back to the Autumn Equinox.
Now, we've also been talking a lot about candle magic and abundance magic lately, and I heard that you have a special Friday the 13th money spell or abundance spell.
So, I get on the old Google here and there. So I was Googling because I wanted to make sure that we touched in the beginning about the whole Mabon versus Autumn Equinox, which we'll get to in a minute. But I Googled Mabon versus Autumn Equinox. And what came up was, how you can, like, Google will initially come up with like an AI response now.
Uh-huh.
So I Google this and it comes up with this like whole detailed AI thing. Okay. And I think there might be something to this, and I'm always down for some divination and some money spells. But it was to take 13 pennies, and twist on this is because I do collect pennies, if not from the year of my birth, from the decade of my birth. I would try to take 13 pennies, at least from the decade of my birth. And you do, your type of money spell. I won't get into what it said on there because I'm not necessarily for using other people's verbiage. But, do your little chant, your little rhythm, your little poem, your rhyming sentences, whatever you want to call it. And then you take these 13 pennies, and it says to bury them in the earth. I am not necessarily for that because, pennies in the earth, they're not going to decompose or anything, and that's really not kind. But my twist on it would be take a mason jar full of dirt and bury those pennies in the middle of that dirt. And basically, you are going to put out there that with these buried pennies, what you're supposed to do then, you're supposed to bury them all heads down. Okay. The heads and tail, heads
Yeah.
down. So you're supposed to wait until like the next Friday, the 13th, however long that is. You dig up the pennies, and I guess depending on how many pennies are now heads up is whenever you will get that amount of abundance in your life. Here's my
Like a
problem.
day, a week, a month per penny.
It wasn't really specific. This is like some AI. But the thing is that what if there's like, say there's 10 or 15 months between Friday the 13th?
It's a good question. I guess you'd have to wait. This is like one of those long-term spells,
I have instant gratification issues.
right? Well, especially with things like money, these things take time. Money doesn't grow on trees. And even if it did, that takes a long time. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with a long-term spell. Sometimes you have to do long-term spells. Like my money bowl has been going since January 1st. This is
I was
another
going to say,
long-term spell.
you have had that thing going for at least forever.
It's burning right now. But this gives me a really great idea because what I like to use those AI suggestions for is inspiration. And you gave me a fantastic idea for a Friday the 13th, more instant gratification spell using 13 pennies.
But do you see how, like, I didn't really like some of the ideas, so I twist my own idea in?
That's
Like,
exactly what I'm saying.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to bury it outside because, that's kind of not kind to the earth. Put it in a jar and bury it that way. There's ways you can kind of twist it. It just says, use 13 pennies. I would want to use 13 pennies either from the year I was born or the decade I was born. You want to take these things and you want to make it your own. You want to not just take what you're getting from a book or from a website or from a
Right.
Facebook page or from an Instagram post. You know, yeah, okay, AI came up with this 13 pennies, bury it, say some words. There could be something to that if you make it your
Yeah.
own and come up with your own words. Like, don't use the AI words. Take that idea and make it into something that's yours.
Yes, like the idea that it sparked for me is to take 13 pennies, charge them on the 13th with my idea of abundance. And I love your idea of taking pennies, trying to find the ones that are from your specific year of birth or pick a particular year or decade. The act of searching for that specific time frame that adds magic and energy to it. So that's one more component to the spell. So I really like that. But I like the idea of taking those 13 pennies, charging them on the 13th, and then I like the idea of a little bit of constructive littering. Kind of maybe drop those in a little bit in a parking lot, or maybe as you're doing your errands, maybe drop one or two on a sidewalk. Keep in mind that you're spreading abundance and you're spreading luck so that when other
But then
people,
how are you going to know if your head's up?
no, no, I'm changing the whole spell.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So now you take those pennies and you spread them throughout your day, maybe on Saturday the 14th or over the next couple days. And every time you drop those pennies, think of the idea of spreading luck and abundance so that when someone else finds those pennies, they not only get some of that energy for themselves, but it redoubles the spell and sends energy back to you. So now you're kind of spreading it out to other people because everybody knows you find a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. So you're just reinforcing that with a little bit of extra magic of your own with Friday the 13th in the mix as well. So you can do that. You change the spell a little bit, I change the spell a little bit, and now we have a fantastic spell, and it's much more personal that way.
And that's how you can utilize it for powers of good.
Yeah, use it for inspiration.
In a few minutes, I'll give you another example of a really cool AI thing, but I'll get to that when we start talking more about traditional stuff.
Awesome. Well, all right. So now that we're into the equinox a little bit, the autumn equinox that's coming up is on September 22nd, this coming Sunday at 8:43 a.m. Eastern. And for our Southern Hemisphere friends, it is the spring equinox. So they're getting ready for that.
Luckies.
I don't know. I think we're pretty lucky. This fall has been phenomenal in my part of the world. It's absolutely gorgeous here.
Actually, it has. It's actually been really nice. Things have actually been rebudding. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I have some. When I was doing your little, I'll get to your little challenge in a minute, but when I was doing your little challenge, I went out to my garden that's mostly kind of overrun and finished. But there was a couple little peppers that are trying to flower again.
Yeah, it's definitely not what we're used to.
There's so much abundance here in Pennsylvania as compared to when I lived in California. This was a very hot, dry, everything was brown and dead time of year. So it's fun to see the difference in seasons. But I'm very much enjoying the abundance around here.
It is my favorite time of year, actually. I say I love summer best, but I just like to be warm, let's face it. There's something intriguing and wonderful and mysterious about, like, it's not just we talk about change, you might feel change, but like it's visually right in front of you, at least where we are. And I understand it's not like that in all parts of the world. But in the Northeast of the United States, this time of year is a drastic visual change. Everything goes from gorgeous, bright green, everything is just that vibrant green and colorful flowers. Now we're getting into that autumn leaves. Everything's reds, oranges, yellows, browns. It's a die-off, but it's a gorgeous die-off. Is that
And
okay to say?
Yeah. The meaning of the season is right in front of your face. There's abundance everywhere you look. The farm stands on my road are overfilled with vegetables and corn and gourds of all kinds.
But in the same respect, the fields are now chopped and bare.
They're starting to die off. You know, everything's starting to change and to die. And even as the trees are gorgeous, you know, they're turning those reds and oranges and yellows. It's because the leaves are dying. They're getting ready to go dormant. You know, it's that visual reminder that we're well into the dark half of the year.
It's the peak of reaping what you sow.
Yeah.
It's literally the peak of reaping what you sow. But in the same respect, astrologically, it is also that second point in the year when day and night, dark and light are absolutely 100% 50-50 equal. You know, we got 12 days. That'd be crazy. 12 hours of light, 12 hours of darkness. You know, we've in the past done the stand the egg up thing, stand the broom thing up. But even if you're just living life and you're working and you know, taking care of the kids, doing whatever you do, you're still cognizant that there is 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night for that
Yeah.
one day, you know?
Everything in the seasons around us are telling us that it's time to stock up for winter. It's time to get ready to go within. And it's a beautiful time of year to start work on taking stock of your magical self, taking stock of where you're at, and be prepared for the second half of the dark part of the year where we really go within in a big way.
So funny you should say that. I happen to do this from time to time.
What'd you do?
I came up with a new tarot spread, and I'm just, you know, I didn't come up with no fancy name. I'm just calling it the Fall Equinox spread. What I've got here is 8 cards.
Good amount. I like that.
You can add a significator if you so choose. 8 just seemed kind of right because I kind of broke it up into 4 quarters, you know, the 8 Sabbats, the kind of 4 quarters of the year. There was some thought put into it. What I've got to start the spread, and it almost kind of looks like a cross, similar. I'll post stuff online. You've got your first 2 cards, and they represent getting things in order before the dark time.
I like it.
Although we do recognize that we are midway through the quote unquote dark time of the year.
This is when it starts to get dark. This is the celebration of the second harvest. This is when we start to put things away for the wintertime, traditionally. And this is when people really start to notice that it's getting dark.
Until in bulk, really. So these first 2 cards, getting things in order before the dark time, before going within. And then above that, the second 2 cards are balance and harmony. What do you need to bring balance and harmony? The next 2 cards.
Left or right or above?
So we're starting on the left with getting things in order.
Uh-huh.
Then 2 cards on top for balance and harmony. The next 2 cards.
Next 2 cards, do they go to the right?
So the first 2 on the side.
Okay, so the first 2 cards go 1, 2 to the left, like the left-hand arm of a cross, right?
Right. Getting things in order. And then you've got the 2 for balance and harmony.
Kind of making like a centerpiece of the cross stacked
Correct.
on top of each other, like the top arm of a cross.
Correct.
And then to the right of those, you have 1, 2 out, like the right arm of a cross.
Correct. And those are your plans for going within.
Okay.
And then the bottom 2 that are kind of stacked like the bottom of the cross.
Uh-huh.
The best wording I could come up with, action items.
Yeah, well, that's like the fire position, so that makes sense.
Action items. And then basically the thought is if you choose to have a significator, that could go in the middle where all 4 points meet.
Okay, I like it.
The theory behind this spread is to give you a sense of where am I at? What do I need to do to find my inner calm? What are the plans I need to make to get there? And what are the action items that I need to do right now? Top priority. What do I need to do to get my shit together?
I'm excited to try that particular spread because I really like doing tarot spreads this time of year. If I'm going to increase like my daily card pulls that I'm journaling, now is the time of year I tend to do it. I get very introspective after Mabon.
Summer's over, fun's over,
Yeah.
trips are over, vacations are over, festivals are over.
Yeah, I look in, I kind of reevaluate everything. So I'm doing bigger spreads and bigger pulls So I'm really excited to try your poll for the next time I do a journaling spread. That looks like a really good one to journal.
Well, and you did bring up a good point that it seems like, I don't know if it's because you're inside more, looking for more inside stuff to do, the introspective thing, but tarot is definitely a good way to kind of guide yourself through that inner dark time.
Yeah, and it's cold at night here in the mountains. It's chilly. I'm still out and active a lot during the day, but at night it's cold. I'm cold. I want to be in my office or in my house. That's when I tend to pull out the journal and write a little bit longer than I did maybe in the summertime.
Absolutely. I will definitely post the schematics of that spread. I just like coming up with spreads. I think it's
It's a
fun.
good one. I like it. Now I'm going to apologize to some of our purists because I did say Mabon as I was just talking about the autumn equinox. And I will still affectionately call this holiday Mabon because I like it. That's what I learned. We do know that Mabon is a term that was given to the autumn equinox in roughly 1974 by a gentleman named Aidan Kelly when he was trying to make sense of modern day at the time and historical Wheel of the Year holidays. So they wanted 8 holidays. He kind of made up some of those names, and Mabon is one. It's the name of the god, but he chose to kind of slap that onto the autumn equinox. And some people prefer not to use that because it's modern.
Well, and I sometimes I don't mind calling it the fall equinox, but autumn equinox is a different connotation for me on a personal level, which you're aware of. So I just call it the fall equinox. Sometimes I
Yep.
will say Mabon out of habit. But as we're learning, Layla, just because we learned it when we were 18 doesn't mean it's right now.
That's right. That's right.
I'm trying to retrain myself. I'm trying to retrain myself.
I love that. I think with Mabon, it's totally okay. And if you don't want to call it Mabon for reasons because Aidan Kelly made it up, that's okay. That's absolutely fine.
But please don't send us hate mail about it.
So I will occasionally affectionately call it Mabon, although I do try to say autumn equinox to be a little more specific. So you actually had a fun challenge for me today that I adored, Shell. It had me feeling very witchy and very magical out in my lovely yard.
Well, we hadn't done a quote unquote try it episode in a while, a long while. And not that this was a try it per se, but it kind of was. I was thinking, we've been doing this for a minute now, and this is like what, our third Mabon episode, our third fall equinox
Mm-hmm.
episode podcasting. So I was like, what could we do that would be a little different? We don't want to talk about the same old, same old. What can we do to give folks not a task per se, but a try it, for lack of a better word, something that they can do at home? And I was outside smoking my cigarettes because I can't smoke in the house. And I started looking around and seeing kind of all of that fallish kind of stuff. The pine cones are falling from the trees and leaves are starting to fall and get a little colored and crispy and dark. And the bark is starting to peel off the birch trees. The acorns are falling.
It's starting to look like fall.
It is. Ultimately, things are dying off for the season. And I thought, I'm just going to go outside and forage me some fall stuff out of the yard. So I went around, I gathered some very wonderful fall looking stuff, and I was trying to think of a way I could turn some of the stuff into either a magical piece, for lack of a better word, or something to put on the altar. And I just started kind of collecting stuff and walking around. And I came up with something really pretty and very poignant for the season. And we'll talk about in a minute what I'm going to do with it. But I sent you a picture and sent you the challenge. Do the same.
You sent me this gorgeous picture of a beautiful collection of fall items. We'll put up pictures on all the socials, but you sent me this picture. I'm like, wow, that's gorgeous. And you said, go out in your yard, gather what you can that reminds you of fall, of Mabon, and bring it back and see what you can do. See what you can put on the altar just with what you can forage from your yard. And I'm like, challenge accepted. I'm so down for that.
It literally started becoming like a battle of the pictures.
Every time I would go out, I'd find something more beautiful, more interesting. At first, I'm like, what the heck am I going to get? But I am very lucky, dare I say, blessed with the yard that I have because I have so many wild herbs and animals and things just abundant in my backyard. So I knew I was going to win this challenge.
And, I kind of have it from more of a city dweller perspective. I do have a yard and I do have trees, but I am definitely not in the country like you.
No, you're in downtown Salem practically.
Yeah, yeah. And for folks that are even more downtown than I am, go to a local park or go to a state forest. Or if you got to do what you got to do, go get some stuff from the damn store. It's okay. You don't have to find it on the ground.
Wegmans has their cinnamon brooms out. I've been being very good and not buying a ton of them. But yeah, go to your local farmer's market, go to a park. All you need is one fall leaf or one acorn or one pine cone. You don't have to go as all out as Shell and I did. We're both pretty lucky. That was a beautiful photo you sent and what you decided to do with your leaves and bark. We'll put up pictures of what we found. I did also put my hag tapers. I cheated a little. I'll admit I cheated. I already had the mullein stalks that I had harvested just a little while ago that I've been keeping and drying so that we can make hag tapers, Hecate's torches, as a try-it closer to Samhain. So I'll admit I already had those, but the rest of them I just kind of gathered from what I had in the woods and the fields.
The annoying part about all of that is the fact that you actually have mullein and I don't growing in the yard. So there's that. But so I put this together and, whatever you want to do. And, you kind of made like an altar out of it that was absolutely gorgeous. And I kind of jarred mine. I put it in like a clear vase. What my intention for that was, sometimes my go-to in the fall is a simmer pot. And I'm like, I'm not going to be simmering bark and leaves here. I wasn't going to do that. And I was like, what about kind of making like a spell jar simmer pot minus the water? So I almost want to call it a spell vase.
Okay.
Bringing in that change into your home, bringing, that natural change from outside into your life. Change sucks and we all hate it. How about make it as least shitty as possible by having natural change instead of chaotic, traumatic change? It's almost like a quote unquote spell jar of sorts to bring in that natural next tick in the wheel.
I really loved your spell vase for a couple different reasons. I like on the changing of the seasons, every high holiday, every tick of the wheel, as Shell would say, I like to redo my altars. At the very least, I'll clean them off, dust everything, put everything back all nice and pretty. But I do like to decorate them for the season. So maybe I'll put a new cloth down.
Pretty.
Yeah. But if I had a vase and I know exactly the vase that I can use, you can change what's inside the vase for each season. And I think that's kind of lovely. And this might work for witches that are undercover as well. If you have a large clear vase, for summertime, you can just put things that remind you of summer in it. For springtime, it can be all spring flowers and lovely light crystals. And for Mabon, it can be fall leaves and Shell's even got some Salem dirt, I think, at the bottom of it. And
I do.
you can put berries and cinnamon sticks in it.
Sand in the summer.
Those little twinkle lights for Yule. And so I love the idea of a vase that stays the same on your altar, but you change the contents of it with each holiday. I think that's very cool. It's a very good idea.
Layla, we're witches. We like things we can put things in.
We totally do.
We really do.
So the other thing that we're doing for this holiday of Mabon is we're going to be together, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to doing ritual with you.
Let's tell the people what we're going to be doing. Well, actually, we're going to be recording a lot of episodes, first and foremost, people. I promise.
Hopefully some video if we can get off our lazy witchy behinds. But very fun thing that we'll be doing during the day is we will be at the Central New York Pagan Pride Day in Liverpool, New York, near Syracuse. We will be there all day.
This is fabulous. And if you are in Northeast PA or New York State, Central New York, hell, if you're in Jersey or Vermont, if you can get to Central New York on Saturday, the 21st, these girls will be there.
We'll be doing workshops at the festival at Pagan Pride Day.
If you are looking for specifics, it is at Long Branch Park in Liverpool, New York. And just to give you an idea, Liverpool is like an outskirt town of Syracuse, New York. So we will be at Long Branch Park in Liverpool, New York on Saturday, September 21st. Now, Layla, you are going to be teaching a workshop 11 to 11:45,
I am.
and it's called Charm Casting, Magpie Tarot, and Bone Throwing.
All sorts of chaos divination and how to get your witchy psychic senses going by breaking all the rules.
And then from 2 to 2:45, myself, will be doing my workshop, Sips and Smells, Herb Magic.
Woohoo!
You know, I love good herb. You know, I love to burn things and I love to drink things. So Sips and Smells, Herb Magic, 2 to 2:45. Like I said, if you are going to be in Central New York on Saturday, September 21st, come check out the witches. And please, for the love of all things holy, we get sometimes an email saying, oh, well, we were at so and so and we saw you, but we didn't want to say anything. If you are there and you see us, come up like a screaming fool and say hi. We want
We're
to meet
always
you.
happy
We
to
want to
meet you guys. I have been having so much fun with some of the emails that we have been getting. I really appreciate you guys, the comments, the stars, the likes, the subscribes, all of it. Thank you guys so much. We love it.
We also want to make sure that you're aware we are still catching up on DMs, emails, and all of that. We are still catching up. Have faith, people. We'll get back to you.
You know, I was a little late getting to our recording session this evening because I was out trying to buy a tarot deck. I'm so excited, Shell.
Oh my God. Oh my God. What are you buying? What are you buying?
Hold on, it's not that exciting.
Do I have it?
Yes, I'm sure you do. The tarot deck, I'm buying two actually. I'm getting a tarot deck, which is just a mass produced Rider Waite Smith tarot deck.
I love that, by the way.
I do too. It's very nice, but I'm getting it so that I can break it up and give it to people for this chaos divination workshop. So if you're one of the people that comes to my workshop, you'll have an opportunity to take some tarot cards home for your own magpie deck. But the other deck is the old Druid Animal Oracle. And I am so excited because I think that was my very first Oracle deck ever. And I know you've got that one.
I feel like I have that.
It was my first Oracle deck. And when I saw that she had both of these decks, I was just so excited. So I'm happy to get the first one because it's one that I won't mind breaking up and giving to people. And I'm super stoked about the other one because I haven't had this Oracle deck in a very long time. Like a lot of witches, you know, you get excited, you loan things out to people who want to learn, and you're like, make sure you give it back. And then you never fucking get it back. So that's what happened to mine. So I'm excited to replace it. But she wasn't able to make it. I have to wait. So I have to wait. But I will post pictures once I get it.
Can I just say, I have literally known you for like 30 years, and you are always the person that loans things out and never gets it back.
I
It's like
know.
it's literally your fate, except for me. I've always given
You
things
have.
back that I loaned out.
No, you are wonderful. That's why I love you, Shell.
You are like the one person who always loans shit out and never gets it back.
It's okay. I've kind of accepted it at this point, but you know, I do like to loan things to people. I like to teach people. I like to share.
Did you ever get that copy of Mists of Avalon back?
No, I never did.
Damn you.
And I'm not exactly sure when I decided to start putting a come back to me spell on all the things I loaned out, but once I started doing that, oddly enough, I haven't had anything not come back to me in a while.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm very, very excited to do the Central New York Pagan Pride. I'm very excited to do the workshop. I'm just very much looking forward to the Autumn Equinox this year.
And you know, for me, on a personal level, I am going to be thrilled to be back in Central New York. I'm actually from the southern tier of New York, but southern tier, Central New York, same thing, for fall. You know, to be in upstate New York during the fall, you can't beat it. Well, unless you go to Vermont, but you can't beat it. You know, the smells, the colors, it's just, I'm excited. I can't wait. I just can't wait to spend the weekend doing ritually stuff with some New Yorkers.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're going to be here and that we're going to be able to do ritual together. The dark half of the year is not just about abundance and preparing for the winter and preparing to go within, but it's the time of year when the veil starts to thin. People like to say around these bigger holidays, the veil gets thinner until it gets to Samhain when it's at its thinnest that time of year. So working with ancestors is another really good thing to do this time of year.
Well, that's also why it's a good time for tarot because that connection is, I don't want to say easier, but kind of
Yeah.
easy.
When we talk about the items that we gathered for our gather things in your yard and see what you can turn it into, some of the things that I gathered were dead flowers, was bark, was thistledown, and some of what I gathered was living. You know, it was bright flowers. I had asters and bee balm, and there was some fleabane in there. There's some goldenrod, but there's living and dead things. You know, this is the time of year when you have both. It's that balance. It's, you know, the balance of abundance and coming death.
Damn you, I went dead only.
So I have a spell that you can do using some of those things that you gathered, no matter what it is. So because the autumn equinox marks the point between light and dark and life and death, it's a liminal space. And so you can get into that liminal space to talk with your ancestors. So I'll tell you what this is. You're going to have one black candle, one white candle to represent duality, to represent death and life. Put the black candle in a safe dish, and you're going to surround it with anything that you've picked that's dead, that's not alive. Bark, pine cones.
Fallen acorns.
I have a deer's jawbone that I found. So any of those things that represent death, you're going to put there. Then in the other dish, you're going to take a white candle and you're going to surround that with living things. You know, the leaves, the flowers of fall, anything that you've harvested from your garden, but things that are alive, that represent life, renewal, vitality, that type of thing. So now you've got one life bowl and one death bowl, basically. You're going to light both of your candles. And as you light the black candle, focus on your ancestors. Maybe you'll say their names out loud. Maybe you'll call them to you. Then light the white candle. Think about life and yourself and your place in life and where you're at right now. And think that you are a continuation of your ancestors. You are part of that whole cycle. So then as those candles burn, meditate, journal, maybe pull some cards, think about your connection to your ancestors and what lessons they might want to give you, what advice they might want to teach you. You should also think about what your intentions are for the dark half of the year. What lessons from the past can guide you? What wisdom from your ancestors could help you navigate the challenges that are coming up? So as those candles burn down, do your journaling, do your ancestor work. And then once the candles have burnt out, trust that that spell has worked, that you've gotten some wisdom from your ancestors. And then dispose of the organic stuff outside, give it back to nature, and then maybe put a little bit of the candle stubs on your altar to remind you of the changing seasons, of the change from life to death.
I love that.
Isn't
I
that
love
nice?
that.
So you can do that, like with the challenge that Shell gave me. I started gathering things that were both alive and dead that reminded me of the season. So that's something that you can do with those.
Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, you know, I love all things divination.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, and again, you know, being a New Yorker at heart, I like this apple magic.
Oh, I love that.
So this particular form of divination involves taking an apple, peeling the apple in one piece. That is real hard, by the way. It's a lot
Oh,
harder
my
than
grandma
that.
used to make us do that and say the alphabet while we did it. And where it broke was the person you were going to marry, or the letter or the name of the person you were going to marry.
Oh,
That's not where you're
well,
going with this, is it?
that's not where I'm going, but you know, that is also a good form of apple magic if you'd like for that.
I guess it kind of
But
is, right?
to almost a similar end, you know, you try to peel it off in one big piece and then you drop that one big piece to the floor. That is going to make some sort of shape, and you are going to basically
Ooh.
divine that shape. Not looking like a sailboat, you know, does it fall looking like, I don't know, a caterpillar?
Sure, it's
Like,
kind of like the same thing as reading tea leaves
right,
or throwing
correct,
buttons or even throwing
correct,
bones. You know, you're reading a
correct.
pattern. It's cool.
Right. So you're basically going to peel this apple into one big long piece and then divine whatever the picture, symbol, whatever it is you see in that.
I love that. And then you should chop up that apple and make air fryer apples out of it.
Ooh, I don't have an air fryer, but I know where you're
Ooh.
going with that.
I'll put a link to a recipe I found. But yeah, air fryer apples, lots of cinnamon and sugar and butter. Yum.
But I'm also a go-to person of simmer pots. Tis the season for simmer pots. You take some cranberries, some cut up apples, some cut up oranges, some pine needles, maybe put in some bay leaves, little anise stars, and simmer that. That's a really good magical on one level, make your house smell good on another level thing for this time of year.
I love those, but I don't know. It's something about my brain. As soon as I start thinking about putting a simmer pot together, I'm like, well, I could put a simmer pot together, or I could make apple muffins, or I could make cinnamon sugar apples in the air fryer, and my house will still smell delicious and like fall.
See, I'm not a cooker, so cooking never crosses my mind because I'm not a cooker. So once I get a simmer pot in my mind, that's it, done deal.
I do love the simmer pots, but yeah, then I start thinking, I'm like, I could make some mulled cider. But yeah,
Yeah,
I,
but
I
you know
tend to
what?
go
You're just
there.
you're just doing food magic, that's all.
Yep, same thing. I love that. Yeah, simmer pot, toss it in there, put everything all together. Oh, it smells so good. And then you've got an offering to put outside.
Absolutely.
One last thing is I noticed on the things that you gathered and the things that I gathered, we both had different types of very thin bark. And you even mentioned it when you texted me. You're like, aren't you the person who loves these birch bark rolls? And yes, I am.
Which, by the way, I don't know what made me think that, but I was like, I'm pretty sure Layla loves birch bark rolls. So I actually took a couple huge rolls and put them in Ziploc bags, and I'm bringing them to you.
I love you. You're amazing. That's fantastic.
Who else can I bring tree bark to that's going to love it more than life itself? For real.
No, it's absolutely true. I'll totally own that. I am that friend. Yes, it's me. Yeah, I'm the friend you bring the weird shit to. It's true. It's true. But I do love that bark. Any thin bark will do. And I have some pine trees here that have super thin, pretty bark. I'll give you some in exchange for your birch bark. But I love those for spells. They're absolutely phenomenal for spells. Bay leaves
You
are
can write
tiny.
on birch bark because it's so
Yes, you
thin.
can. Yes, you can. And this other type of bark as well. And it's super thin. So once you've written on it, you can then burn it in a candle if you have a safe burn dish or in a fire. It's organic. So you can bury that spell in the yard. So if you have a spell
Right,
like
right.
your penny spell that you want to bury in the yard, instead of burying the pennies, you could write your spell
Bury
on
the
this
bark.
and bury the bark. And plus, it's bigger. Shell in the past has lamented the fact that she can't write all the people she needs to fucking curse on a bay leaf. So,
They're small.
but birch bark you can have really long. So I really, really love all the things that I gathered. I'm drying the bee balm, keeping the bark. I'm keeping these things as components on my altar, and I'll use in spells going forward. So it's pretty nice to have it around.
I'm glad you've come up with a couple of ideas for folks. I do hope that you guys find some of these something that you can go and actually try on your own and find use and magic in them. But if nothing else, enjoy the balance, enjoy the harmony. Happy equinox.
Yeah, get out and enjoy the day. I hope the weather where you are is beautiful and you can enjoy some of that wonderful fresh air, whether spring or fall, whichever hemisphere you happen to be in. And enjoy the dark half of the year. Enjoy that preparation to go within. That about wraps up our Friday the 13th and Mabon Ideas episode. Happy equinox to all of our listeners. We hope you enjoy this upcoming holiday. We'd also like to give an extra special shout out to a few of our benefactors. If it wasn't for the financial support of our benefactors, we would have a much harder time keeping this show running. So we'd like to give a huge magical thank you and lots of return blessings to Connie, Catherine, Tammy, Delisa, Justine, Kaylee, Melissa, Helen, Wendy, and so many more. It's thanks to all of you that we're able to put out an episode every week. If you'd like to become one of our benefactors, check out the description of the show and you'll see a support the show link. Stay wise, stay wicked.
And keep it witchy, folks.